There's the talk, and then there's also going to be a workshop. The workshop portion is included in each one of these packets at the end of the speaker section. Okay? So you'll see all 4 of the talks, which include, well, you'll hear. Each one of the talks will come up. So all 4 of the talks will be given according to the schedule. After that, there is the bio of each speaker, and then following that is a helpful list of resources. And then after that is every one of the slides you're going to see in front of you today, okay? Yeah, also on the website will be all the slides from today as well, okay? So I want you guys to notice something as well. Notice that your name tags are different colors. This will be really relevant to the game that's going to happen. So look down, you'll see your name tag is either white, blue, brown, or one other color. Red or gold, yes. Basically you'll be separated into groups based on that color. So notice your name tag and notice that color from now. I'm really excited to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Dr. Maggie Atea. Dr. Atea is a clinical psychologist. She has been working for 15 years as a psychologist with all different patient populations, all different kinds. She has worked for 12 years with Caltech students, as well as running her own small private practice. She's also now the clinical director of Rose City Counseling Center, where she supervises doctoral students, which is super exciting, who offer low-income or affordable therapy for people who need it in the community. I know Maggie for a long time, and I know her to be the most warm and loving and motivating individual. She's here with her husband, Peter, and we are super excited to have her give this amazing talk. So please welcome Maggie.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Wow, that's loud. Very exciting. I feel like an actual professor of literature. I mean, it's really funny. Well, welcome. I love what Abuna said, that you're investing today in your spouse and each other. I think it's great. I have to say the people that put this together, they're amazing. And they've really worked so hard. So I know they're going to get lots of round of applause, but I just want to give them another round of applause because it was a lot of work for them, and they did an amazing job. And they had us very scheduled, the speakers, so we've been ready for this for a few weeks. So they had asked me to talk about conflict management, and I thought that the first thing we have to talk about before we talk about how to resolve the fights that we have is how do we keep a healthy relationship. I work with couples a lot in my private practice, and what I see all the time is that the things that we're going to talk about today go missing. There are things that are there when we're dating. There are things that we're so excited about when we first meet the person that we're now with, but somehow these things tend to trail off. And we'll talk about it, but I think that one thing that happens too is when people have children. So we'll get to that, but initially I want to talk about sort of how it came to be. By the way, I'm not going to address like our Christian values because Abuna James is going to get here and he'll talk about that. Everything that we talk about, just infuse God in it because obviously we're all Christians and so this is good. But I wanted to bring up the idea of how we learned that being part of a relationship is actually innate. It isn't something that is just like a socialized thing. This is an innate, born thing that we're meant to be coupled up. So Harry Harlow kind of changed this view for us in psychology because he did all these great experiments on rhesus monkeys, and he found that they had two different categories of, two different like platforms where these acted as the mother monkeys, and one of them was a terry cloth monkey with like warm like fur, and the other one basically was dry but had milk. So this was like a source of food and nurturance, and then the other one was just comfort and warmth. And they found that the monkeys would go away from the milk and towards the one that felt like it was the mothering, kind of warm, so that we are finding that basically through touch and affection that outweighed their fundamental need for survival. So I just thought that was really in psychology, we find it pretty interesting. You guys might not, but other really cool thing is Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is also kind of fundamental in psychology, that it's about what motivates us. So these are our different categories of things that motivate us. By the way, you can see the slide behind me, right? Okay. So basically your fundamental needs are what motivates you, are like food, water, and sleep, and then safety. But I just thought it was so interesting that in the middle, dead smack in the middle, is love and belonging. So again, it's not something that is just something that we want, but it's actually a need. So you're with your partner right now because you need that person. So just keep that in mind as we go through, that that person is actually not only complimenting you, but they are making you whole. So keep that in mind. I like to think about relationships like I think about salad. Anyone that knows me knows that I love to eat salad. It's my favorite thing. But there are definitely different categories of salads, right? Caesar salad is still a salad. It's called a salad. It is a salad. But is it as healthy as a salad? Oh, is it not advancing? Peter, I need you. Okay, so a salad that contains things like kale and tomatoes and cucumbers, that's also a salad, but you would think of it as a much healthier salad. I want you to think about your relationship right now as you're sitting with your partner. Think about your relationship. Are you in a Caesar salad relationship, or are you in a kale, tomato, cucumber salad relationship? Sometimes in that type of relationship, there are things that might be a little bit bitter, right? Many of you, especially the men in the room, are probably thinking kale is so bitter and not good at all, right? So think about in your relationship, sometimes things are difficult. Sometimes we have to put our pride aside. Sometimes we have to say, I'm sorry, even though it hurts just a little bit. It's a little bit bitter. But sometimes you have to do those things in order to make your relationship a healthy relationship. So think about your relationship. Think about the ingredients that you have in your relationship. And that's really what we're going to go through. So the first ingredient for your healthy relationships, and if you can see in the worksheet, I left it blank so you could fill it in, is communication. This, I know everyone in this room has heard 4 million times. Communication, communication, communication. The reason you've heard it 1 million, 4 million, 600 million times is because it literally is the keystone to a healthy relationship. If you aren't communicating with your spouse, everything is lost. How will you know what the person is feeling, or what their needs are in that moment? The really interesting thing, I feel each other really well, and they stay married 20, 30 years. Guess what? 20, 30 years down the line, you aren't exactly the same person as you were 20 years prior. But the couples that I work with tend to treat each other exactly the same as they did when they first met. So you have to keep in mind your spouse is an individual human being. They are growing, they are learning, they're changing. Different things happen to them at work. Different things catch their interest. People grow and mold and evolve over time. So don't ever think for a second that you know your spouse 100% because you knew them from 10 years ago. Like, I've known Peter for 20 years. I learned something new about him every day, I think, like pretty much every day. So it's really interesting. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind that if you're not communicating with each other, you won't know. The answer will always be, I don't know. Respect. We hear it a lot, but this is also another thing that I think causes a lot of people problems. Respect is not something that we can take for granted. It's not something that you can forget. You have to remember that your partner requires respect. There's this book called Love and Respect. I don't always recommend it because how it divides it up, but it does say that women require love, whereas men, their primary thing is respect. I mean, I think it's primary for everybody, so that's why I don't like to divide it up, but it's very, very important to think about respect. It's treating others the way you want to be treated. It's showing kindness and consideration. It's liking yourself enough to be yourself. That's another thing, is you have to respect yourself in order to respect your spouse. Accepting others for who they are. I mean, respect is not just in your marriage. It should be in the world. We should respect everyone in the world because everyone is a human being and God's children. But think about think about in your day, and all these ingredients that we're talking about today, I want you to think about every day. Have you done something to show your spouse that you've respected them? Have you communicated with your spouse? I really want you to keep that in mind. I want to talk about quality time and not quantity. A lot of people think like the more time I spend with my spouse, the better. It's not always the case. It's not the more time, it's what did you do with that time? It's the quantity, it's the quality, not just the quantity. So my parents are obviously married, and they worked together. They had their office was the same office, so they would drive to work together and come home, and they were together all the time. That was quantity of time. It wasn't always quality of time. But I think about that. I think about the couples that I work with. Whenever I ask them, like, how much time, sometimes the couples that I have that are like the worst matches spend a lot of time together. It's not that. Don't think to yourself, like, I don't spend enough time with my spouse, that's why our relationship is going down. No. Take the time that you have and think about how you can make it more quality time rather than quantity. I like these little quotes that I put on there. The greatest, I'm sure you can't read it, so I'll read it to you. The greatest gift you can give someone is your time, because when you dedicate your time, you're offering part of your life that you will never get back. I love that. I love that. Where you invest your love, you invest your life. Spending quality time alone. We're going to get to that, but you know, a lot of it too is about you need to be full in order to fill your spouse. So we're going to think about how do you get full, right? So time apart. Time apart is a really important ingredient. So sometimes we need to be apart to understand just how much we truly love each other. It's really true. It's true that you need some time away from your spouse to remember not only how much you love them, but to value them, to appreciate them. Like, spending time apart, I'm not talking about weeks and weeks and months. No good, right? But spending enough time apart that you feel like you've rejuvenated yourself and that kind of quality time to your partner. True love doesn't mean being inseparable. It means being separated and nothing changes. I love that. I love that idea that I go home and wake up in the morning and I go to work and I come home and I know that my relationship is still solid, right? Like nothing changed just because I had time apart. You can't really talk about ingredients for a healthy relationship without talking about the 5 love languages. I'm just going to see, like, how many of you have heard of the 5 love languages? Yeah, the majority of you. I would say almost. I express this all the time, and actually, this is in my work. Figure out what your love language is that you want to receive love, and the love language not only that you generally give out, but that your partner needs to receive. Generally, the truth is, they're different. They're usually different. Unless you're marrying your exact same human being, they're different. Like my love language that I like to receive is actually different than the love language that my spouse wants to receive. So I have to learn how to adopt and how to change the way I give love. So the 5 are receiving gifts, acts of service, words of affirmation, quality time, and physical touch. There are lots of things you can do online to figure out which one your primary. They're usually primary 2. Love languages are. So take those. They're like little quizzes you can take online to figure out which one is yours. And you'll feel, right, all of us pretty much accept love in all of these languages, but we have a primary and usually a secondary, and our spouse will have a primary and usually a secondary. So you really, really want to think about this. I have a couple that I work with that their love language, this is the reason that they're in couples counseling with me, is because they cannot figure out how to show each other love. Of the group, of the relationship, he likes to receive love as acts of service. She likes to receive love as words of affirmation. They literally keep missing each other. No matter how many times I sit with them and talk to them about this is what he needs and this is what she needs. I mean, it's really gotten down to we're going to write down like different ways that you can do acts of service for your husband. We're going to fold it up and put it in the bowl. We're going to do the same thing for her, words of affirmation, put it in a bowl. And every day you're going to pick through those bowls and do something on that piece of paper. Whatever it takes for you to make sure that you're showing your partner love the way they need to receive it, do it. And that is like really, really important. Whatever you can do to show love to your partner, do it. So figure those out. That's really important. Appreciation is one I love to talk about too with my couples, because how often do you guys say thank you on a given day? Probably a million times out in the world, we're saying thank you so much, oh, that was great. You know, we're rewarding everyone in the world with appreciation, and how often do we say it to our spouses? How often do you say, thanks, honey, for, you know, getting me a cup of water? Like, we've gotten to the point sometimes when people are married, you know, 10, 20, 30 years, you get to the point where you almost expect it. Like, oh, I'm going to go get a cup of water, and I'm going to get you a cup of water. It's expected. Nope. You got to rewind. There should be no expectations that your partner will do anything for you, right? Like, they're doing something out of the kindness of their heart. They need appreciation. I think this comes up a lot, too, when people have kids. I don't have children, but I'll speak to what I see in the world. Is I think that having kids, everybody's working to beyond their capacity. It's beyond 100%. Everybody is working at 150%. Everyone is tired and run down. And the first thing that goes is appreciation. You forget to tell your wife, thank you for feeding our child. You forget to tell your husband, thank you for changing his diaper. You just expect that everyone is going to pitch in and do the same. Sure, guys, don't get me wrong. Everyone should pitch in. Everyone should work. Everyone should change diapers. Everyone should. But the idea is not that I'm just going to expect you to do this without showing you appreciation. That is where resentment builds up, and that is where things fall apart. So this is really important. A person who feels appreciated will always do more than what is expected. Always, always, always. This is really, I wish my boss could read this, because it's really important. Like, if you feel appreciated at work, don't you feel like you tend to do just a little bit more because you're appreciated? That's just what happens. But if you're underappreciated, what do? I do the bare minimum, right? I'm going to do the bare minimum, because if I don't feel appreciated, I'm going to give you just the minimum. I'm not going to go above and beyond. You're going to get what you get. Appreciation can make a day, even change a life. Your willingness to put it into words is all that it is all that is necessary. That's all that it is. Appreciation is just putting into words what I'm sure many of you already feel. I'm sure you already feel appreciative of your spouse, but let them know. Don't think that it's cliche or it's old. They already know how much I love them and how much I thank them. No, please, please, please don't do that. Don't make that mistake of not showing appreciation to your spouse because you assume they already know. It's not a good habit to get into. Positive versus negative. So a negative thinker sees a difficulty in every opportunity. A positive thinker sees an opportunity in every difficulty. I love that. I wish I could wear it like a sign on my chest. You can't live a positive life with a negative mind. I think that this is a really common thing that happens. I hate to put down the millennials, but I do feel like the millennials tend to be more negative thinking. I don't know what it is, but we can all do a dissertation on it and figure it out. But I do think that being a negative thinker really impacts your daily functioning. You walk into a room and you can actually perceive two different things, right? You can walk into a room and perceive this is like a dark and, dirty room, or you walk in and somehow find the light. That's all I'm asking you to do, is think about, what are you bringing into your marriage? What are you bringing into your relationship? Are you bringing positive energy, or are you bringing negative energy? That same couple that I was talking to you about, that they have the love language issue, the husband is a very negative person, and it drives the wife crazy. And the thing is, though, what's really interesting is it's not like he's negative on purpose. It's just the way that he thinks. Like, he's just a very cut and dry, very rational, black and white thinker. So everything is what it is. So for him, it's not, he doesn't think of himself as a negative thinker. He just thinks of himself as very rational and thoughtful. He's a mathematician, so that should tell you something. But so we're working together now to get him to be a more positive thinker, to think about how he can bring positive energy into his marriage instead of negative energy. He tends to complain a lot. Things are never, think about that, right? Think about if a person that you sit with is always, always, always complaining, constantly complaining, do you enjoy your time with that person? No, no, sir. Like, absolutely not. It's just not enjoyable. So think about another common complaint from couples that I see is that, you know, somebody will come in the door and immediately, because they have maybe a new baby, and I don't want to put this on women, but women tend to be home with the children more. So I think that the husband will come home and find that immediately the woman is like complaining and like, oh, the baby's been crying, and that's exactly true, right? That has been happening all day long. But think about what energy you are entering, like your husband is entering your home with, and what you are literally handing him on a plate, right? So it's lots and lots of negative energy. How about, instead of doing that, immediately it's a hug and a kiss and, hi honey, how was your day? And then, the baby's been crying all day, you gotta take baby, we gotta do some diaper change. It just needs, I'm not saying change your life completely and become a different person, right? Not everybody is at a 12. Like, my husband always tells me I'm at a 12. Like, I'm always like excited and happy and like Helena, you all know her. So, but like, not everybody has to be like that. You don't have to be excited and jumping off walls to be a positive person. So just think about how you as an individual can be more positive and how you can bring more positive energy into your marriage. When we're going to start to talk about conflict in a marriage, I really want you to think about choosing your battles. Not everything can turn into World War III. It just can't. Not everything requires a complaint. Not everything requires an argument. You guys have to learn how to minimize and figure out what are the battles. Oh, sorry. Okay. What are the battles that you want to fight? So, again, this happens a lot where people are arguing and fighting about everything. And at some point, you have to decide, is it worth it? Is it worth this fight? Is it worth the damage that I'm going to cause right now in my marriage? Or can I just let this one go? This is when I was talking about in the beginning of kale in salad that's a little bit bitter. This is where, when we're talking about choosing our battles, this is where it comes in, is you have to think about when it's appropriate to bite on some of that kale, right? Like sometimes you're just going to have to swallow something a little bit bitter. And I know, I'm a human being. I know that when we feel something, we immediately want to like react to it. We immediately want to act on it. But just think, if you paused just for like 2 seconds and thought to yourself, is this fight worth it? And guess what? There are some fights that are worth it. We talk about all the time in marriage, fighting is okay, guys. Don't think, oh no, like me and my partner fight, so then we're not a good fit. That's not true at all. We're going to talk about how you fight. But fighting is okay, but choose what fights to have. You don't need to be fighting about the trash every week, right? If he doesn't take out the trash, just do it yourself. I mean, there's things you have to figure out, like, what can I do to minimize these fights, right? Like, so immature people always want to win an argument, even at the cost of a relationship. Mature people understand that it is always better to lose an argument and win a relationship. It's really important. It's really important to think about that, right? So again, there are things that you will want to fight about, and that's why we're going to talk about how to fight, right? Did you see that? Don't look at it. So I just want to know, like, tell me some things, like some common things that you guys, well, you don't have to speak from yourself if it's private, but like what your friends fight about in their marriage. Like, what are some common things that people fight about in their marriage? What are some common arguments you've had, or this fight comes up a lot? What are some of the issues that you guys, yeah? Social media? Oh, that's a good one. I didn't even think about that. Yeah? Keeping house chores. Yep. How to raise the kids. It's a good one. Yep. Coming home late? Have you met my husband? Finances. Yep. That's a big one. That's pretty common. Yeah? Huh? To have children. To have or to have not. That is the question. It's a good one. So pretty much everything you guys said is in this category. So free time, this is like, think about when you argue, think about the time that when you argue, is it usually about the free time that you have? Like, so someone says social media, this is probably in your free time. Like if you have 3 hours of free time, but your spouse is on Facebook for an hour and a half, I'm sure that's going to cause an argument, right? Like that might come up. So this is free time is what you do with the time. You know what, Romy? I didn't actually put in there raising children, obviously, because I don't have children. So, but I do think that free time actually fits into that. Like the idea of like in raising your children, like what do you do with the time that you have with your kid, right? Of course, when they're 0 to 1, you're changing diapers and feeding and burping. You're doing fundamentals. But when they're older, like 5 years old, like what are we doing with our kid? Yeah. Finding time to sleep and needing sleep. Yeah. So raising kids, but also thinking about like the time that you have for each other, for romance and for sleep. So true, so true. I mean, to be honest, having kids in a relationship could have been an entire other talk. And I mean, I could have given a talk, but nobody wants to hear from the chick that doesn't have babies. But I mean, I'll tell you that having kids is the same as, like, for example, like I have a very demanding job, right? So I spend a lot of time at work. So I think that like that time that we have together at the end of the night, it's the same as like if I had a kid, it's juggling those things, right? Like juggling jobs, juggling kids. So because some of you may not have kids in the room, but you may be thinking, but this still comes up, like the idea of finding time for romance and finding time for sleep. Money is a common one. Finances, somebody brought that up. Housework, so chores, Helena brought that up. Physical intimacy, this is another one that comes up a lot as things that people battle about and fight about. Extended family, I'm sure somebody in this room has had an argument about some in-laws situations, right? So especially in the Egyptian community, our families are, right? Like they're just a big part of our lives. So I'm sure that has come up, maybe one or two of you in this room. So I like to talk about how we fight. So John Gottman is, he's this psychologist that basically changed the way we think about couples therapy. So the cool thing about him, the reason I love him so much, he's not Christian, he's Jewish actually, but he kind of created this lab in the place. At first it was in his home, but now it's a place that he works, where he videotapes couples. And so the data everything that he writes about is from actual data. It's from things that he's observed from couples, which I love, right? I love that it's real data. It isn't just theories and thoughts, like it's come from real things. So his whole thing is, just like all of us say, it's okay to fight, but it's about how we fight, right? So he talks about the 4 things that he calls the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which is funny because if you read in Revelations, it's not good, right? So he talks about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse as these are good indicators of a marriage falling apart. So if you have these 4 things or one of these 4 things and it happens on a regular basis, not just one time or whatever, but if it's a regular thing, that this can lead to the failure of your relationship. So the 4 horsemen are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. I'm going to play a little video and then I'll talk a little bit more about them. But where's the speaker? I have a commercial just for you to watch.
Anthony. Sorry, go over this.
I can talk as we're getting the video. It's what? John Gottman. So in some of the references you have on your page, some of the books by him, I've read most of his books and I have to say they're really good. So should be on there. Yeah, that's just one of them. He has like I think 7, 8, maybe more.
Dr. Gottman, author of The relationship cure, who is a relationship expert, has identified 4 attitudes that wreak havoc in relationships. Dr. Gottman defines this type of negative situation as featuring the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. In this video, you will learn about them and ways to solve them. 1. Criticism. The first horseman is criticism. Of course, we all complain to each other. Married couples more than most. But it's a particular type of corrosive criticism that Gottman identified as being so destructive. Criticizing someone's character, instead of simply stating a grievance, can be very destructive. At their worst, criticisms have the implication that the other person is bad or wrong, at some deeper level. How to deal with criticism. Voice the concern and make a request. For example, instead of saying, "You're late again. You only think of yourself." Say, "It's 9 o'clock. You said you would be here at 8. It's the second time this week. I'm lonely and upset when I wait for you like this." 2. Contempt. Dr. Gottman's second horseman, the most violent and dangerous for our limbic balance, is contempt. When someone has contempt for their partner, this is the single greatest predictor of divorce. Contempt can involve sarcasm, name-calling, mimicking, and eye-rolling. Whatever form it takes, contempt makes the other person feel worthless. How to deal with contempt. Build respect by appreciating the positive. For example, say, "I love your taste in music," instead of, "The sound of your laughter makes me want to vomit." 3. Defensiveness. A person is too defensive when they are always trying to make excuses for their failures or slip-ups. People do this automatically from time to time. But when it becomes a persistent theme in a relationship, this can signal the end. Take your share of the blame and suggest a solution. For example, "I guess I should have put it on my list." "Okay, let's do it now." Not, "No, I didn't pay the gas bill because you forgot to remind me." 4. Stonewalling. Stonewalling is when a person metaphorically raises the drawbridge and cuts off communication. Stonewalling is a masculine specialty that's particularly upsetting to women. After days of criticism, of attacks, and defensiveness, one then decides not to give nods of encouragement to their partner. When they speak, no attempt to empathize, and no effort to respond or connect. It's like talking to a brick wall. How to deal with. Speak, move, respond, blink, move a muscle, anything.
Okay. What? But not next. No. Speed. Awesome. Amazing.
Welcome to another episode of Relationship Alive. This is your host, Neil Sapp. Our guest today.
Maybe close that.
Yeah, let's close that.
Let's close it out.
Always fun. All right.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so again, these are things you can Google and look up. There are lots of little clips like that out there, but I liked that one. But I really want to kind of break it down just so you can really get into it in your head, these 4 things, because these really are, I really think they're the cancer to a relationship. So, and unfortunately, I think many of us do one or all of these at some point. And I think many of us could identify our partner doing one or all of these at some point. So again, this is not about that one bad fight that you had and then it's okay, right? We're trying to figure out now, what do you do naturally? Like, what is your default, right? So think about criticism. Like, are you a person that finds yourself, like, when you're in an argument, and by the way, all of these things come from a place of, like, I mean, there's definitely family of origin issues there, like how you were raised and how you were taught how to fight and how it was taught to you, right? Like how your parents kind of parented you. So this is not, I want to say it's not your fault, right? Like if you are by default like a defensive person, that comes from somewhere. So you just got to figure out where that comes from in order to help yourself kind of figure it out and work through it. But if you're a person that automatically criticizes, that immediately you get into an argument or you find that something is going wrong and you find that you immediately want to criticize, you're complaining without like, and it's always like blaming the other person. Criticism is really difficult, right? Also, it doesn't make the person who is criticizing feel any better. Like, this does not help anyone. You both fail. Like, it's fail-fail situation. So think about different ways. So let's say, I'll go from the male to the female. So let's say your wife comes home with like the worst haircut you've ever seen in your entire life. And your default is to say, honey, what happened? Like, where did you go? What did you do? What happened? So the way you would maybe correct for that immediate thought is, oh, I see that you got a haircut. We're just going to leave it at that, right? So the point, again, we're not trying to make you be disingenuous. Like, the idea isn't now, I want you to come home and be fake to your partner all day long. No, please don't. That's the worst thing ever. But the idea is, keep in mind what you are doing to your partner every day. What kind of things come up when you argue, when you fight. So think to yourselves right now, just take a second or two and think about the things that you may have criticized your partner for, and think about how you can correct for them, right? How in the future, if the same thing comes up, how you may want to correct the way that you speak about it. By the way, there are ways, like for example, I'll use the haircut thing. So she comes home, terrible haircut, you immediately want to say terrible haircut. Instead you say, oh, I see that you got a haircut. That doesn't mean that at some point you may want to say to her, I don't enjoy the haircut that you got. Like, maybe we can figure out different, hair salon for you to go to next time. It doesn't mean that you can't communicate, number one, right? Communicate what you truly feel. If you didn't like her haircut, it's okay to say at some point, I'd like you to work on changing your haircut, but you do it in a way that isn't critical, that isn't a way that is going to hurt somebody's feelings. Defensiveness, it happens a lot. So I really want you guys to think about, in arguments, are you becoming defensive? Do you find yourself like immediately that your partner or somebody, okay. I should look behind me every once in a while.
We're going to get off airplay for the next one, but keep
okay.
going.
So you want to think about when you feel like you're being attacked, that if your immediate default is to be defensive about it, right? So you're losing your communication. In being defensive, you've shut down respect, you've shut down communication, you've shut down all of the things that we talked about in terms of having ingredients for a healthy relationship. Defensiveness comes from a place of insecurity, right? So if somebody is telling you you've done something wrong, take literally a 1-second pause. If I tell you, you did this wrong, take a pause. Just take a second and think to yourself, maybe I did do something wrong. Like, I think that the easiest way to diffuse a relationship is to go, maybe, instead of saying that your partner is completely wrong, maybe you say, maybe. Like, I don't want to say that everything you're saying is completely wrong, so maybe let me think about it. That's, one of the tricks that I tell my couples all the time, and we do this in session, is I'll tell them, say to your partner, maybe. Let them say the worst thing possible, and then you say, maybe. And then it gives you a second to really think about what it is that they've said, and then you get to think about why they said what they just said. I wanted to ask you any examples, but I just feel like it's I don't know if you're willing to share, but is there anything that anyone, again, maybe your friend talked to you about things that you may have gotten defensive about, but that comes up. Like, anyone want to share? I know it's private, but your friend dealt with it, Maggot. What he said, I don't know if you all heard Megan, but what he said is, like, sometimes when your argument, everything just gets escalated, right? Like, you initially start the argument and then you just find that everybody is just on top of each other. So Megan said, like, let's just calm down. Like, let's just take a second and think about it. It's so important to take a second. You have to remember, the person you're fighting with is your spouse. They are the people that you chose to be in love with for the rest of your life. That's it, y'all. You made that choice for life, okay? So that's it. Like, you have to just keep in mind that person is so in love with you. Even when they're fighting with you, they're in love with you. Even when they tell you, I hate your mother, they love you so much, right? So you really have to keep that in mind. This is something I think we often forget. I do. I think that we often forget that the person that we're arguing with is the person that we've chosen to be with for life. And for many of you, to have children with. You're populating the world with this person. Like, that's the love of your life. Don't forget that. So immediately when you want to fight and you want to get defensive, take a second. Just take a second. Take a step back. Here's the thing that's so important about that. I hate to say it. I hate to point it out. Take some responsibility. We are not perfect. We are absolutely not perfect, and your partner may be telling you you've done something wrong. I hate to tell you, but take a step back because you may have done something wrong, right? We often want to say, like, no way, that's on you. I feel really bad for my husband because I do this all the time. But, like, something, it will look like it's my fault, but I'll always be like, no, that one's on you, kid. And it's 100% not, right? It's 100% my fault, 99% of the time, but don't let him know I said that. But, the thing is that we can't get defensive. We can't...
Ladies and gentlemen, you have 1 minute to return to your seats. 1 minute to return to your seats. Welcome back, everyone. We're so excited to have you come back. I want to really thank our last speaker. Maggie, you make me look so good. I get so excited when you speak. Thank you. So our next speaker is Dr. Mina Youssef. He's a child and adolescent psychiatrist. He's been working for the past 6 years with individuals, with children's, family, and couples. He just accepted a job at the American Indian Counseling Center with the County of Los Angeles, where he will start in the fall. Full disclosure, this is my husband, and I'm mildly obsessed with him. From Poco. I was going to use words like magical and unicorn, but I'm going to let it go and just introduce you to the most amazing human I've ever met in my life, Mina Youssef, on communicating.
Hi, everyone. Can we all just give like a round of applause for Helena? She's doing like a great job emceeing. Thank you. Thanks for embarrassing me. I feel so loved. And also, just thank you to Dr. Maggie. That was just like gold and like titanium and platinum and all this stuff, all the good stuff. It was just like so good. And my hope is that I can kind of build on some of the things. I feel like she said everything that you ever need to know, but I'm like, okay, well, this is a good challenge. We're gonna try to take it a little step further here. So, what we're gonna talk about today is a little bit more of the like how-to. My hope is that we kind of make this like a practical like when I've got something I need to say to my spouse, I've got a need, a desire, an issue, or whatever. I need to say no, I need something to change, whatever. How do I do that in an effective way that keeps like the important goals of our marriage like as a priority? So, I mean, this could be from anything from taking out the trash to like, we need to talk about intimacy issues, and hopefully it will be able to be applied to the kind of range of things. So, the way I'm going to do this is by teaching you guys a couple of acronyms, because my brain has like very little space for new knowledge. So like I've learned that in my life, like acronyms are really the only thing that kind of stick like for like a couple days before they go away. So hopefully we can use these acronyms together. So we'll start with like, okay, what are our goals here? This is so important. Oh, wrong direction. Okay, we got this. So I think this is so important because before we decide to communicate with someone anything, if we take a second to kind of formulate what do I want to get out of this, it's going to be way more effective. If it's just like a reaction to like, I'm hurt right now, I'm feeling an emotion, and I'm just like exploding with the immediate thing, we're likely not going to really achieve our goals. So in this seminar here, our goals here is so that we can discuss ways to get your partner to take your opinions seriously. If you have a reason to say no to something, to a request, how do you do that effectively? How do we move beyond power struggles so that we can cooperate and trust each other? And then at the core, how do we create a relationship grounded in mutual respect, compassion, and emotional safety? Then we want to talk about ways how we can be skillful in communicating what we need and want from our partners. And also, how do we get our partners to do the things we're asking? Because that's not so bad. It's a good thing when they can actually follow through. So I am using a model today, partly using a model called nonviolent communication. Nonviolent communication is something in the psych world that's been around for like about 30, 40 years. It was really started by this guy named, a psychology dude. His name's Marshall Rosenberg. He's really amazing. He has some great books if you're interested. Sorry. I think they're in the references. The nonviolent communication is in response to this idea that our dominant paradigm in communication is actually kind of a violent way of communicating. It's kind of a way that isn't that is focused on I have needs, I have wants, follow them. It's dominated by like a paradigm of there's one person in charge and another person that just follows. So the nonviolent communication model is based on this idea that there's two equal people that they're trying to work together for a common goal. They may have some differences, but the idea is that they're going to be focused together to work as a team. It's really been spread by this fellow named Arun Gandhi. He's actually the grandson of Gandhi, the original Gandhi. And he said this quote, where nonviolence really means that you're allowing the positive within you to emerge. The focus is to be dominated by love, respect, understanding, appreciation, compassion, concern for others, rather than like in the dominant paradigm, which is the violent paradigm, that we're self-centered, greedy, selfish, hateful, prejudiced, suspicious, and aggressive attitudes. So I think to start with, how do we get to where we want to be? Takes a second. Let's take a second to identify some of the common barriers to what stops us from actually just having like having this so easy. Well, it's tough. So in your handout, you've got 6 things. They're all listed here. So we're going to list them really quick one by one. First is, oftentimes we just don't have the skills we need. We don't have the know-how. So like we want them to get what we're trying to say. We want to be able to listen to what they're trying to tell us, but we don't really know how. Like we're kind of like, it's like trying to fix a car without the tools. Like I just don't have the skills. The other thing is like sometimes we have the know-how, but we haven't really taken the time to figure out what is it I want. We don't have a goal set out. We don't have a request. So we're kind of like, an example of this would be like, say my wife is talking to me in a certain way and she raises her voice. I'm just just be nice. Just be nice. Just like, why can't you be just nice to me? And what I'm really trying to say is like, what my request is, what I want is that she doesn't use that tone of voice, that it's not a loud volume, and that it's not like 300 decibels, like only a dog can hear it kind of thing. Like I want it a little lower. So to really be clear about what our wants and needs are. The other thing is sometimes like we have the skills and we know what we want, but we're so charged with emotion, kind of like what Maggie was talking about, that we can't use the skills, we forget what we want, and our emotions are really what's taking control. So, this is anything from like anger, frustration, sadness. Sometimes they're just really dominating. and they control what we do instead of us having control of what we do. And then the other thing that happens too is we often forget our long-term goals for our short-term goals. So long-term goals are things like, I want to be married to this person for the rest of my life. I want to raise children with this person. I want to have a healthy, God-centered relationship. These are long-term goals. Short-term goals are things like, I want to, sleep in 10 minutes, and she's preventing me from doing that because she's giving me chores that I didn't expect. You know what I mean? Like, those are like short-term things. So if we're just thinking like, okay, yeah, those are important, we're allowed to have the short-term goals, but let's not sacrifice the things that really matter, our long-term things, the things that we're in the long haul for just like this immediate gratification type thing. And then sometimes other people get in the way. That we have the skills, but sometimes there's a power dynamic, and that can be, and more often I think we blame other people, where that's not necessarily true. And the last thing is, sometimes we have some core thoughts and beliefs, oftentimes about ourselves and about our ability to communicate and our ability and our role in this relationship that really impede us. So I just want to share just a couple of these common ones. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to read this, so I don't know if you can see. Oh, I also need to change it. There we go. So these are some myths we believe. So I'm going to read them because I know it's not super clear here. And as I'm saying them, I want you to just think about like which are things that I think. Like I'm not going to have you like raise your hand. Just kind of like do like a silent thing inside of yourself to like. I don't want you to even nod because I don't want to like put you on blast. But like maybe like you can just like blink to yourself like, oh, that's one I believe, or something like that. Okay, so do you ever think like when you're in this like kind of dilemma of trying to communicate something difficult, I don't deserve to get what I want or need? Or if I make this request, this will show that I'm a weak person, that like to kind of like need something is equivalent to weakness. How about this one? I have to know whether a person is going to say yes before I make a request. That you're so nervous and scared to kind of like, get a no, or to start something, or to test the waters, you have to know, or it's just not even worth it. What about this one? So are you guys like blinking in your mind? Like nodding if you agree, if this is something you've ever believed? If I ask for something or say no, I can't stand it if someone gets upset with me. It's like, if they don't like me, then I won't be able to like live with myself. If they say no, it will kill me. How about this one? Making requests is really pushy. Like if I actually ask for something or ask for something to change, I'm being really selfish and self-centered. How about saying no to a request is selfish? I should be willing to sacrifice my own needs for others. Obviously, the problem is just in my head. If I would just think differently, I wouldn't have to bother everyone else. What about this one? If I don't have what I want or need, it doesn't make any difference. I don't care. I think that's a common one, self-disclosure here, that I experience is kind of like, whatever, I don't care anymore, just like this like apathy. But oftentimes when we tell ourselves I don't care, that's just like, that often means that we really care a lot. That's a common thing I've noticed. So these are all things that like, it's important that we recognize that we're dealing with, that we pay attention to these things, and we call them what they are. These aren't necessarily true. These are lies. Let's call them lies if they're lies. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about 4 steps. 4 steps for how do we communicate and express in a loving way what our desires and goals are. So these are some 4 broad categories. At the very end, after the request, we're gonna do the acronym that I think is like the meat and potatoes of this talk. It's called Dear Man. It's on the second page of your handout. But this is kind of the setup for how do you get to Dear Man. So the first thing that we do is you have to identify the observations of the situation. Before I even tell you what I mean by that, I want to read this poem. So So these are observations. So this is a poem by Marshall Rosenberg, the dude that kind of created this nonviolent communication model. I'm going to just read it, and you can read along. He says, I can handle your telling me what I did or didn't do, and I can handle your interpretations. But please don't mix the two. If you want to confuse any issue, I can tell you how to do it. Mix together what I do and how you react to it. Tell me that you're disappointed with the unfinished chores you see, but calling me irresponsible is no way to motivate me. There's more here. I have more than what's on there. I don't know why, but just hear me out here. There's more to the poem. And I tell you that you're feeling hurt, and tell me that you're feeling hurt, but when I say no to your advances, but calling me a frigid man won't increase your future chances. Yes, I can handle your telling me what I did or didn't do, and I can handle your interpretations, but please don't mix the two. And this is just so important. So I think when we're so used to intercommunicating, especially of difficult topics, things that lead to conflict, we're communicating things that are really opinions, judgments, criticisms, prejudices, and we like to pass it off as if this is just common knowledge. This is just what it is. It is a fact that you're a jerk face. It is a fact that you are rude and incompetent, that you don't think about my feelings. No, that's an interpretation, that's a judgment, that's an opinion. That's not fact. So I think when we do that, what does it lead to? Bad things in a dark cloud. Aggression, violence, resentment, conflict. So what do we do? So how do we tell the truth clearly and honestly without attacking the person? Really starts, the first thing is we have to start with, I hope you don't mind, I put some, I keep on forgetting I have to change this here. So opinions and judgments, criticism, prejudice. Okay. So it really comes down to observing. We have to observe just the facts. So this is kind of like looking like a detective would, or like you're almost writing a police report of the incident, okay? A police report can't put like, and this person was being really unreasonable because of blah, blah, blah. No, they have to be like, well, this person had their hands clenched, was maybe sweating a little bit, kind of like I am now, and had a red face or whatever. But they can't, those are all observable things that a detective or a police report would have. Those are just the facts. Interpretations are judgments. That's what they are. When we give it a qualifier, if we call it good, bad, neutral, those are all interpretations. Those are all judgments. So I hope you don't mind. Throughout the rest of this talk, I put a few pictures of what I think are cute animals, all from cuteoverload.com. So let me give you an example using this picture here of what they called burritos. To call them burritos is an interpretation, okay? That is a judgment. If I say, in this picture, there are cute kittens wearing bundles of cuteness, that's all judgment, that's interpretation. But if I'm going to just use the facts, what I would say is, there are 3 kittens, baby cats, that are sitting in a clear Tupperware, or laying in a clear Tupperware, wearing tiny little beanies and things that wrap around them. So it's just sort of like just the facts, okay? When we do things like analyze other people's, our partner's demeanor and the situation, what we're actually doing is we're expressing our own needs and our own values. Examples here, if I'm saying that like my spouse is sloppy and disorganized, what I'm really saying is that I am more concerned about details than they are. I have this need for details that they don't have as much of a need for. So what I'm really recognizing is that it's a need for me. It's not necessary, it doesn't have to be about them. This is my need. If I'm saying that the other person is aloof or insensitive or like callous, what really may be happening is that I value a certain feeling more than they may be feeling. I just have this different need than they have this need. If want to call them immature, it may just be that I need a little bit more of like a professional type environment. If I'm going to call them needy and dependent, maybe my desires are more what someone else is offering. So just to hone this a little bit more, let me give you a few more examples here. About the difference between, because I think this is so important. We can't really start anywhere before we really practice and like understand the difference between just like analyzing the situation as it is with just facts and just neutral, non-judgmental words and ideas, and then understand the difference of when we put an evaluation in. So some differences here are, if I'm going to say someone is, you are too generous, okay? That is an evaluation. That's a judgment. That's an interpretation. What I could say is, when I see you give all of your lunch money, I think you are being too generous. So now there's two things happening in this compound sentence. You've got, I see you give all your lunch money. Okay, this is an objectable fact. It happened. I watched it happen with my senses, with my eyes. This is my interpretation. I see it as you're being too generous. You need to keep some of that lunch money so you eat. Another interpretation, another difference might be if I say, Doug procrastinates, or even worse is, Doug is a procrastinator. Okay, that's who he is, or he procrastinates. That's a judgment. That's a judgment. It's very different than saying, Doug, he studies the night before the exam. To say he only studies before the night exam is also kind of judgmental. Unless it's true. If like, he literally didn't study at all outside of the night exam, then like me, then we can say Doug only studies the night before the exam. We're not calling him a procrastinator. We're not calling it procrastination. We're not saying he does the verb procrastinate. We're saying this is just exactly what he did. Okay, so these are some other examples I'll let you guys look over in your handout if you're interested in trying to tease apart the difference. So once we've gotten that an example of that would be, so if I am upset because my partner didn't come home at the time I was expecting, it would be very different to say, honey, you said you would be home at 6 o'clock and now it's like 9 o'clock. Why are you late? That's a judgmental thing to say, like, why are you always late? It's also judgmental. But to say, dear, you told me earlier this morning that you would be coming home at 6. I expected you at 6 o'clock and you did arrive home at 9 o'clock. Those are just facts. We had that conversation in the morning. As much as concrete detail you can put in, sometimes helpful. Like you could say, like, it happened, we talked about it 2 times this week on Monday and Wednesday, and today, which is Thursday, I expected that you would arrive at 6 o'clock because of the conversations we had on Monday and Wednesday, and what ended up happening is that you had arrived home at 9 o'clock. So you see, like, where I'm still saying, like, this is not okay, or I will, but I'm not infusing interpretation or judgment in there, okay? So the next thing that I think is important to spend some time paying attention to is the feelings that are behind our request. So in each of your handouts, you have a list of feelings that are, you should have a list. Let me make sure it's here. Is it in the back? Let me see. Oh. Okay, never mind. I don't think it made it to the handouts. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So, perfect. So what you see here is not, or what you will see here, is a list of kind of a long list that you can barely see. I'm sorry, of different emotions that people feel. On the left side are emotions that are commonly felt when our needs are met, when we feel like what we need, both physically, psychologically, mentally, spiritually, is fulfilled, then we feel comfortable, rested, interested, glad, peaceful, loving, all kind of positive emotions, all kind of different ways to like kind of happy, positive things. On the right side, you have needs that are feelings, emotions that come with when needs are not met. So, feeling tired, uninterested, bored, sad, nervous, mad, anxious, scared, annoyed. So I think it's really important to have this language and this repertoire of different emotion words. And I think what we often do is we often confuse feelings from thoughts. And I think it's so important to distinguish our feelings from our thoughts. So here's a little bit of like my 2 cents about how to make that difference and why it's important. So when we often say things like I feel, scared, angry, sad, those are emotions. When we say things that have the words I feel and then after that the words that, like, or if, usually what we're saying are actually thoughts. They're not actually feeling words. They're not emotions. They're actually thoughts. So just because a sentence or we're saying the words I feel doesn't actually mean we're expressing a thought. You have to stick with it, because I think this is something that I commonly experience and I see that you have to be careful of your language really matters when we're talking about emotion and thoughts. So here's some examples. If you say I feel that you should know better, that we talked about it earlier, that is a thought and a judgment, right? You're not expressing an emotion. If you're saying, I feel like, same thing. When you say, I feel like a failure. I feel like you weren't listening to what I said. I feel like this is not going to go anywhere. Those are all thoughts. Other ways we turn feeling words into thought words is when we say things like, I feel I am, I feel you are, I feel they are. When we use pronoun after the I feel, we're now going to make a judgment or make an interpretation about me or someone else. So I think the best way to think, this is my opinion, when you're trying to express your emotion, think of a 3-word sentence. Okay? If you limit your sentence to 3 words to start and then go from there, that will help you so much. That'll cut off all of the things that make it into interpretations and judgments. If you just say, I feel angry, I feel sad, I feel bored. Whatever, just that way you're kind of stuck to just using I feel and then the emotion word. But if you add things to it, the pronouns, names, that, like, if, it starts turning into thought words. I want to stop and see if there's any questions at this point. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Absolutely not. I'm not saying no, like there are things that are good and there are things that are bad and there are things that we know is sin, we know there are things that we don't know is sin. I'm saying in this model, I want us to start with just describing the situation. Because what happens is if we start with a value judgment, even if it is based in truth and based in what we believe as Christians and what we know to be true with our, morality, it's not going to be very helpful in our communication strategy. So I'm not against, I'm not saying like, let's just, everything, there's nothing that's good or bad. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that in this communication, we want to avoid going there and until we need to. But in this kind of initial thing, let's stick away from the values. Is that fair? Is that okay? Okay. All right. So that is our feelings. So now I want to talk about our needs. So here are a list of different needs. in the PowerPoint, it's like very small, so I'm really sorry. What we'll do is we'll have a copy of this on the website, so you can take a look. It's basically all the different kinds of needs we have, like Maggie was talking about from Maslow's hierarchy. Anything from like physical needs, that we need like food and shelter and water, to kind of more connection, love needs like acceptance and appreciation and belonging, and nurturing, anything to like we need meaning and purpose. These are all things that all of us need at some point in our lives. So this is kind of overwhelming to kind of like think about, okay, like how do I, when I want to figure out what my needs are in the situation, how do I pick apart all of this? So one way I've learned to kind of think about this is to break it down into 5 different categories that are most of our needs fit into in relationships. These are the 5 A's, so you can fill this in your handout. They're attention, acceptance, affection, autonomy, and appreciation. So let me give you an example. So let's say I had like a really hard day at work. Like I had to go in early, and all day long my boss was just writing me, was like rude, and nothing I did seemed to be right, and I got like criticized, and I saw difficult patients all day, and like just like left like, why am I doing this job? And then I ended up having to stay 2 hours later because I had to do documentation. Gosh, this is getting really personal here. and then I come home, and and I expected that like my wife would be home and would be able to like spend time, and I would be able to talk about it, but she wasn't even there. And then she comes home, so I'm already like 2 hours later, I expect her to be there, and she doesn't come home for like another hour and a half. And so right there, what are some of my needs that aren't being met? Well, and then she comes home and she just was like, I'm tired, I want to go to bed. It's like, I don't really have time, like I'm so tired, it's like already 9:30 and I have to be up early, and that's it, right? So I think about these needs, like do I feel appreciated? Probably not. Do I feel like I'm getting the attention I need? No. Do I feel accepted? Well, probably. It's not like she just didn't accept me. Do I feel affection? No, like I needed some affection. I needed some attention and affection. Do I feel autonomy? Yeah, I feel autonomy. She did her own thing, I did my own thing. So this is a way to kind of think about like what are some of my needs in each situation that aren't being met and which ones are. And so I think once we can give a name to that particular need, so like a very common one, I think particularly in families that have a lot of hectic things going on, is we have this need for ease. Like, why can't the baby just stop and give me like a second to go to the bathroom and just wash my face and just like be a person? Why can't it just be easy? Like we just have the need for, like, why do we have to make this a thing? Why does it have to be a thing? So, I think if we can identify what that core need is, and I think honestly, I would go to that website and I would print that out and put it somewhere where you can, like, I actually have this in my office, because during a frustrating day, I go to this and be like, what are the needs that aren't being met that I can like think about and try to meet them? When we are having our needs not met, oftentimes what's happening is that we're receiving a message that is not positive, that is a negative message, something that is a criticism, something that isn't affirming in the moment. When we receive a message, there are 4 common ways that we can kind of respond. We can, 1, blame ourselves, 2, blame others, 3, we can sense our own needs, or 4, we can sense other feelings and needs. So going back to our goals and what's effective, what's most effective is going to be going to sensing our own needs and sensing other needs. When we shift, which is often much more, which is our default, when we shift to blaming others, these are the 4 things. Blame others, blame ourselves, sense our own needs, or sense others' feelings and needs. When we blame others, or we blame ourselves, we're kind of just we're just in this circle of like of just trying to pass on the buck, instead of trying to figure out, when I get a message, like Maggie was saying, how can I take responsibility for this? Or what are the, when my partner is communicating this, what are the needs that they are not having met? When my partner is telling me that I wish I was home at the time I expected, what do they need right now? They need assurance. They need security. They need trust, because I made a promise and I broke the promise, so that trust is broken. So to tie it all together, let's check out this example. So I want you to think about this hypothetically as we go through this. So imagine it's date night. You haven't had a date for imagine it's date night. You haven't had a date in a long time. Okay, so let's say it's been like 3 months or something, and you haven't had quality time with your spouse alone for like 3 months. And you're just like so excited. You're like, oh, I just really need this. We need to reconnect. You plan on meeting at this like restaurant that you've been dying to check out. It's got great reviews, and your spouse is excited. And you've been thinking about it all week long. You've had a really crazy day at work, but you're like, I'm going to make it work. Like you rushed out of there. Like everyone was like, hey, we need one last thing. You're like, everyone shut up. I'm leaving. I have a date. You get there, right? So you get yourself to the restaurant right at 6:58 p.m. You wait. You text. You don't get a response. You call. You don't get a response. It's like 7:20, 7:30, 7:40. All right. So what are you feeling and what are you thinking? Why? And how might you act as a result towards this person? So let's use this model to break it down. So we're going to start with looking at our needs, then the needs that aren't being met, the feelings that come out of it, okay, when our needs aren't met, the strategies that we typically employ to kind of communicate that are often not effective, and then the evaluations we make about the person, the judgments that we often make, okay, about the person and the situation. So let's see. Oh, I brought it all. Okay. So let's start at the center. Let's start with the needs. The needs that aren't being met. Well, if I expected that my partner, my spouse, would be there at 7 o'clock and I put so much time and effort, my trust is broken right there. I feel disrespected. I feel like I made such an effort. We planned this like months ahead of time, and you couldn't even care to at least let me know that you're going to be 40 minutes late. And now, like, we only have an hour and a half left until we have to be home because the babysitter's leaving, you know, like. And then productivity, I could have done work. If you were going to, like, make me wait around, I could have been doing work or something else. I could have, like, talked to my mom on the phone or something, right? So these are all needs that could have been broken. So when needs that are not fulfilled. When those needs aren't fulfilled, what are some of the feelings? Anxiety. We're worried. We're worried about ourselves, we're worried about them, we're angry, we're frustrated, we're annoyed, we're disappointed. So what are common strategies we use that kind of come out naturally when we're having these emotions? Well, maybe we'll kind of like use some sarcasm, maybe we'll speak in like clipped tones, we'll be a little bit colder, maybe we'll avoid the situation, kind of pretend like it's not bothering us, maybe we'll actually demand an apology. Maybe we'll make a promise to ourselves, I'm never going to do this again. Like, I'm just like never going to make a date with. Like, what's the point? Like, they don't respect me. Like, why would I waste my time? And then what are some evaluations we have about the person? Well, we're gonna think maybe they're rude, they're selfish, they're incompetent, they don't care, they're disorganized, they're untrustworthy, they're a jerk. So I think if we can really start by paying attention to what all of those things that are happening are, then we can start to be effective in how we actually communicate our needs. So let's take this a step further. This is the meat and potatoes of the talk here. This is all just kind of set up. Now we're going to talk about how to make that request. So you're in the situation where you were just almost stood up and you're frustrated and you have all these feelings and evaluations. How do you talk to your partner about what needs to change, and about your frustration. Oh. So we're going to talk about requests. Okay. So on the second page of your handout for this talk, there's an acronym called Dear Man. Okay. Dear Man is gold, in my opinion. I teach it all the time to patients and families, to how to communicate with a parent, with a friend, but it's very, very relevant also to communicating with your spouse. So the dear part, the first four parts, things in this acronym are the kind of like the what to do. So this is kind of how you structure the conversation. This is what you say. Then the man part, the last three, is the kind of how. This is the kind of like the body language, and this is the like what to keep in mind when you're trying to do this. And just a little bit of a preview. After we do this, so I want you to think about this while we're doing this talk. After we do this, the workshop is that we're going to take a few minutes so that we're going to practice doing this together. So what we're going to do is, after I'm done with this, I want you to take like 5 minutes to kind of just jot down notes about a particular thing you would like to communicate with your spouse. So it could be a request, it could be something you want them to know about something that's happened, whether recently or in the past. And I know I'm sort of just like, let's just fight. That's not what I'm trying to say. I don't want us to, just like, I'm hoping that we can really use this skill to have some effective communication. So you're going to pick something that you want to request. So it could be like, I would really like to talk to my partner right now about that. I really don't like it when they don't wash their dishes right after they put them in the sink. They just leave them in the sink and they pile up. I would really like to just communicate that they, in a way that they would hear me. So you're thinking about what your goal is, and and then we're going to use this Dear Man skill to do that with your partner. Okay? And then you'll take turns. Does that sound okay? Are you with me? All right. Okay. So the first thing in Dear Man is that you have to describe the current situation. So this is using your observe skill, okay? So describe the current situation. You want to be objective, stick to the facts, tell the person exactly what you're reacting to. So an example would be, you told me that you would be home by dinner, but you didn't get here until 11 p.m., and dinner was at 7 p.m. So we don't want to say, you obviously don't want to hear what I am saying, you don't care about me, you obviously don't, that's not, what I say doesn't matter to you, you think I'm stupid. Those are all interpretations, those are judgments. So when we describe, we're just setting up the situation, okay? So in the case of another example, in the case of you were late to the dinner, you would say, we had planned to meet here at 7 p.m. I got here a little before 7 p.m. And I had expected that you would get here also. I also had expected that you would let me know if you wouldn't be here by 7 p.m. and you arrived at 7:40 p.m. So these are all sort of like this is just, what happened, okay? There's no judgments, there's no interpretations there. Then you want to express your feelings and needs. So this means that you have to know what your feelings and needs are, okay? So this might for some of us, like it might feel more natural. For people like me, I actually needed to train myself to do this. I actually had to go to a list and think about, okay, what am I feeling right now? I need a list of words. And so that's why I wanted to provide it for you, so that you can actually, if you need some language to use, you can look it up. So how you do this is to say, I feel, I need. You want to use, like I said, short sentences. I feel frustrated. I feel annoyed. I needed to know that you would be here on time, and I have a need for respect and trust, and that's not met right now. That's it. Okay? So when you come home late, I start worrying about you. I feel anxious, nervous, worried. Okay? Not, I hate you, every time we talk about this you get defensive, stop patronizing me. Okay. Any questions about expressing your feelings and needs? I know I'm kind of drilling the point home, but I think it's so important. So that's DE. A stands for assert yourself. This is when you're actually making the request, okay? So you start by describing, then we're going to express our feelings and needs, then you're going to actually make a request. What you don't want to do is say something general and say something that isn't concrete and clear. So you don't want to say something like, I just need you to to treat me like a person. It's like, what does that mean? Right? Like, I just need you to not be mean to me or be nice, or I need you to just listen better. Why don't you listen to me? Those aren't, you're not expressing a need. Saying I need you to make eye contact and nod your head to let me know that you're hearing what I say. Or even better, I would really appreciate it if you could just repeat what I asked you right after I said it. And I know it sounds so childish, but my God, this has saved me all the time. All the time. Actually, this morning, we literally repeated back to each other something. Yeah, this morning. So you want to ask very clearly what your request is. And if you can, put in some details. So put in I would really appreciate it if you can make sure that you wash the dishes after you use them so that they don't pile up in the sink. If you have to leave them in the sink, they can't stay. I would appreciate if they don't stay longer in the sink than 24 hours. Something like that. It's very very specific, but it gives you, you're very clear about what your needs and wants are. Usually, when people know and understand what your requesting is, and it's set up in this way, people respond usually pretty well. Where a lot of the argument comes with is I didn't really know that's what you wanted. I didn't really know, you didn't really know that's what you wanted, So I think these things seem really elementary, but in the heat of the moment, if we just take a second, when you're taking those 5 minutes, or up to 15 minutes, as Dr. Maggie said, to take a break, and you just kind of go through Dear Man in your head, and you come back, then I feel like I can sleep in peace. I'd be so happy if one person did that. Okay. A is assert yourself. R, this is my favorite animal picture, reinforce. That's a baby corgi. So what you want to do is you want to reinforce the person ahead of time by explaining the positive effects of what happens if they actually do your request. Okay, so we have a talk all about reinforcement, so I'm not going to drill this home, but the idea is that you want to let them know they're going to get something out of this, all right? There's a reason why if you do this, it's not going to be just for me, it's going to be for you too. So to do this, we have to understand our partner's needs as well. So this is why when something difficult is happening, if we take a sense about what are my needs right now, and what are my partner's needs, my partner might need some affection, might need some connection, might need some ease, right? What do they need also? So if what my partner needs is ease, then this is what I can do. I can say, well, if you follow my request, I would be so relieved, and I wouldn't bother you. It would be so much easier for you to live around me if you did this, right? If you followed my request, your need for ease will be met. No more nagging, no more annoyance. So this is ways you can package what you're going to say so that it is something that is done in love and something that's done effectively. So, dear man, what's D stand for without looking down? Describe. All right, what's E? Express what? Feelings and needs. Sweet. A? Assert yourself. R? You're professionals. Sweet. Okay, so now we're going to do the man really fast, and then we'll practice. Do we have time? Okay. When am I supposed to finish? Yeah. Okay, sweet. Man. M stands for mindful. This is really important, because I'd like to say that, like, you know, you can just kind of go through the dear part of Dear Man, and like the other person will like listen sweetly and just like be like, yeah, honey, that makes so much sense. And like you guys like hug and there's like butterflies that come out, you know, like I would love that that's what happens. But what often happens is that there's all these distractors. The person might react. They might attack you. They might threaten. They might make judgments. They might be not so nice. So what you want to do is you want to stay focused on your goals, okay? Remember, long-term goals, not short-term goals. Remember to maintain your position, to stay clear. You know, you can stick with your request if it's really important to just like, sometimes it's helpful to just repeat it gently. And so when the other person tries to change the subject, stick with your thing. Let's not get, you know, diverted by distractions, okay? Don't get off topic. So these are some different ways. The broken record is just like continuing to repeat things over and over, and then you want to ignore things. The next thing, the A in Dear Man is to appear confident. I would also add that you want to appear empathetic. So confident and empathetic together. Confident is so that we don't. So what you want to do, if you're confident and empathetic, you're kind of in the middle. And what I mean by that is one extreme would be you're sort of like kind of like stammering and whispering, and you're like walking on eggshells, and you're like, but I really want to talk to you about like something that's like not fun to talk about. Like, I need you to wash the dishes. Could you wash the dishes? Like that's not confident, right? You don't want to do that either, because I know like when my wife talks to me like that, I'm like, I think I might hit you. like, please don't talk to me that way. I'm not going to hit you, but like, please don't talk to me that way, right? The other way is like when she, sorry, Helena. God. Stupid talk. And it's the other extreme will be when we are like aggressive, right? So we don't want to be aggressive, like confidence doesn't mean like we're like, I'm right, you're wrong, and like, you know, this is the way it is, and just listen to me because I know what I'm talking about. Confidence is having good eye contact, calm, collected tone. It's relaxed body language. I think a really important thing in terms of body language is like, if one person's standing, the other person should be standing. If one person's sitting, so it's usually not great to have an important conversation when one person's sitting, the other person's standing, because then there's that kind of like body language differential. So, and if any of you guys have kids, when you're talking to your kids about these things, this is something that like I teach all the time with the kids and families I work with. Like, get down to their level when you're going to have like I mean, as often as you can, but in particular when you're trying to have an important conversation. So you want to appear effective and confident and empathetic. Okay. The last thing, and one of the most important, is actually negotiate. You have to be willing to give to get. So you have negotiate. You have to be willing to give to get. So you have your request, you have your need, but if you can keep in mind the other person's need, and maybe you need to reduce your request. So maybe it's a little too much to ask that they do the dishes every single time. Maybe it could be like, you know, I would just really appreciate it if you could at least do it a couple times a week, you know, like 2 times a week. That would make me feel like I have to do the dishes less, like it piles up less if you could do it that way. You know, you can reduce your request. You can say no, but you can, if you need to say no, maybe you can offer to do something else. Like, no, I actually can't do the dishes every single day of the week, every single time, but I'd be willing to do it, you know, like at dinner, but in the morning, it's really hard because I'm always in a rush. How would it work if I do it in the evening? I make sure I always do the dishes every dinner time, but breakfast, I'm able to leave it. So another way to do this, if you're kind of running it like you're offering solutions and ideas and one person is shooting it down over and over, one thing you do is you can turn the tables. You can kind of say like, all right, you know, I communicated, you know, my feelings and my needs, and I appreciate hearing your feelings and your needs too. What do you think we should do? So you know where I'm at. We talked about the situation. We agree with the observations. We both have feelings and needs. What's your idea? If everything I've come up with is not working, what do you want to do? So that often helps too, because then it gives that person maybe what they need in that moment is the need for autonomy, a need to have a little bit of control and make a decision. So if you're turning the tables and you're saying like, well, okay, I gave you my thoughts and it doesn't sound like they're helpful, but what do you think? So that's all of Dear Man. It takes a lot of work, and it's not something I would recommend for every single time you're going to make a request or a need from, like, have a request or a need from your partner. But when things are a little bit challenging to communicate, I found that this particular way of thinking can really help, like, organize our thoughts so that they're most effective and really keep our goals in mind. So, any questions before we do a practice? Yeah. Yes. Yes, and that's a completely different, that's a whole nother talk, unfortunately. I think when it comes to stonewalling, I think sometimes what I've seen works. Let me give you a disclosure. The stonewalling I've experienced comes from teenagers and kids, so it's a little different. So I don't know, I don't have great advice for partners, but the stonewalling I've dealt with kids, the best thing to do is to patiently wait, and to describe their behaviors. So, like, for instance, I worked with a teenager that, mom brought him in and he really didn't want to be there, and he would just come and I'd be like, so how are you doing today? And he'd just look at me and just keep his arms crossed and take out his phone, and just I would try to engage him and he'd just be like, oh my God, this is gonna be over, that kind of thing. So I would just describe what I was seeing. Dude, what it seems like is what I'm seeing is that you're just crossing your arms and you're sighing. You don't. I wonder, would you be able to tell me, do you not want to be here? So that I make an interpretation there and that kind of thing. And then a little bit of that, believe it or not, they warm up, because you're just kind of patiently just being like, it's okay, this is where you are. I'm here. I'm gonna sit and listen and describe and let it happen. And I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah, you can try it. And then if not, go see someone. Yeah. Any other questions before we do the workshop? Okay, so the way, yeah, the Dear Man, one more time. Oh yeah. So the answers for Dear Man is D is describe the situation. So I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes to kind of to plan it out, whether it's in your head or if you want to jot down some notes about how you're going to communicate to your spouse. And then we're going to start with the ladies, and the ladies will start with turning to their spouse and sharing a particular need, desire, or want, using Dear Man with their spouse, and the spouse can respond, have an as normal as you can conversation, limit it to 5 minutes, and then we'll take turns. Then the guys will turn to their wives and do the same. So D stands for describe the situation. E stands for express your feelings and needs. A is assert yourself. R is reinforce. M is mindful. A is appear confident, and N is negotiate. Cool. All right. So you have 5 minutes to kind of plan it out. So sorry, guys. In the interest of time, if you haven't already started the actual communication, why don't you start that now? Because we only have about 10 minutes left. So ladies can start communicating to their spouses. Okay, why don't we switch it up? So I know it's probably, some of you might be still in the middle. I apologize, but you can keep practicing outside of here. But let's just switch it up to give the other person a chance to use the skill. All right, one more minute here. right, thank you everyone for participating. I hope, thank you. My hope is that we can use this when things are a little more challenging. And I'll turn it over to Helena. I think we get a little bit of lunch.
Thank you, Mina, very much. That was awesome. So we are going to head over to Fellowship Hall for lunch. Prior to getting to the hall, there's about 15 couples who have cars with valet. The valet is closing, so if you can stop by, pick up your keys, you'll have access to your cars, and you'll be able to leave when you want to. Okay? Oh, and we have to be back here at 3:15 sharp on the dot. Actually, get here at 3:10 so that we can respect the speaker and be on time, okay?